I watched the DNC for us. I would say that one big theme of the week was make Democrats cool again. I mean, you can just start with the difference between the roll call procedure at the RNC and the DNC.
Before we begin, I'd like to remind the delegates of the provisions of the rules, which require that each candidate for a nomination for President of the United States demonstrate sufficient support prior to the presentation of the name of the candidate for nomination.
Delegates, are you ready? Let me hear you.
Madam Secretary, the great state of Nevada proudly casts all of its 26 votes for President Donald J. Trump.
Georgia, how do you cast your vote?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight to officially nominate Kamala Harris for president. Stop, get out, another round of shots. DNC, turn out for what?
And it's not just that they got Lil Jon to show up in person and perform during the roll call. This event also featured music from Dolly Parton, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Beyonce's husband, Kendrick Lamar, Alicia Keys, and just so many artists. And at the convention, they had Oprah, Pink, Kerry Washington, The Chicks, Stevie Wonder, Kenan Thompson, the coach of the US men's Olympic basketball team. And notably, they had all of their living presidents, except Jimmy Carter, who is 99 and could not come because he is 99, but who has said that he is trying to make it to vote for Kamala in November. George Bush is the only living Republican president who isn't Donald Trump, and he has endorsed no one, although a bunch of people who worked for him have endorsed Kamala Harris. And then there's Mike Pence, Donald Trump's last vice president, the one who he rallied a bunch of people to threaten to behead. Anyway, he has also endorsed no one. And it's not just vibes that the Democrats want to reclaim, it's also patriotism. But back on the ex-presidents and the future ex-president at the DNC. Biden spoke on Monday night. He closed out the night. It started super late, and there was a lot of buzz in the Fox News verse about this being a disrespectful time slot. But I think you have to have him headline. He's got to go last, and he has to speak on the first night because otherwise he's like hovering over the convention. You got to clear the air. He gets right into supporting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Let me ask you, are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
Then his speech hits on everything you think it's going to hit on. His legacy, everything they've accomplished, his hopes for the future, his fears for the future, the importance of not electing an autocrat, etc. Bill Clinton bragged about being younger than Trump. He also shared my favorite fun fact of the night.
Since the end of the Cold War in 1989, America has created about 51 million new jobs. I swear I checked this 3 times. Even I couldn't believe it. What's the score? Democrats 50, Republicans 1.
Barack Obama was a perfect speaker, as he always is.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
Michelle Obama spoke the same night that Barack Obama spoke. She spoke right before him. She also gave a perfect speech.
I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
We all know that reproductive choice is a big theme for the Democrats this year and every year, and it did feature heavily in a bunch of the speeches.
And so forward on women's reproductive rights, because we believe that a patient's room is too small and cramped a space for a woman, her doctor, and the United States government. That's too many people in the room.
I wish my mother and Kamala's mother could see us. They would say, keep going. Shirley and Jerry. Keep going. Women fighting for reproductive health care are saying, keep going.
They also did a storytelling moment, as they did for several of the themes throughout the convention. And this one, I think very smartly, started with a man.
We were told with 100% certainty we would lose our baby girl, Willow, and we were sent home. For 3 days, we waited until Amanda was sick enough to receive standard abortion care. I'm here tonight because the fight for reproductive rights isn't just a woman's fight. This is about fighting. This is about fighting for our families. And as Kamala Harris says, our future.
And look, if you are tired of Democrats promising federal protection for choice and then falling short, same, so am I. But I am even more tired of Republicans promising to implement abortion bans, plotting to pack courts with conservative justices who fancy themselves legislators, and then following through. There were also a lot of Republicans at the DNC, including Stephanie Grisham, Trump's ex-press secretary, Adam Kinzinger, who was on the January 6th committee, a Republican mayor from Arizona who called the current party a cult, a former Pence advisor, and the former lieutenant governor of Georgia who spoke about how the Republican Party is no longer conservative. They all talked about how they loved country more than party and espoused the virtues of having an adult in the White House. Everyone was really leaning into the prosecutor versus criminal thing. I think I heard the phrase Kamala Harris for the people about 1,000 times. But I think Jasmine Crockett may have had the best comparison bit, so I'll show you hers.
On November 5th, our nation will hire a president, a commander-in-chief, and leader of the free world. So let's compare their resumes, shall we? One candidate worked at McDonald's while she was in college at an HBCU. HU. The other was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and helped his daddy in the family business. Housing discrimination, that is. She became a career prosecutor while he became a career criminal. With 34 felonies, 2 impeachments, and 1 porn star to prove it.
Another important theme of the convention was wife guys.
I am the only person stupid enough to speak after Michelle Obama.
President Obama had to follow Michelle. I had to follow Gabby in pink. Gabby amazes me every single day.
Standing in contrast to the grab them by the pussy party, the men of the DNC are here to show you that it is okay to like your wife, heck, to treat women in general like human beings. Leading the charge of the wife guys was, of course, Doug Emhoff.
America, in this election, you have to decide who to trust with your family's future. I trusted Kamala with our family's future. It was the best decision I ever made. This Thursday will be our 10th wedding anniversary. That same night, I'll be hearing my wife, Kamala Harris, accept your nomination for President of the United States.
As you expect to get at a convention, we got like the character witness bit from the friends and family of both Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. The night where Tim Walz accepted his nomination featured players from the high school football team that he had coached years ago. Walz talks about his small town upbringing, making a subtle jab at J.D. Vance, saying that no one he grew up with went to Yale. He talks about responsibility to one's neighbors, how that inspired him to join the National Guard, and how the GI Bill helped both his father and him pay for college. Very all-American. He talks about his career as a high school teacher and how it inspired him to run for office.
So there I was, a 40-something high school teacher with little kids, 0 political experience, and no money, running in a deep red district. But you know what? Never underestimate a public school teacher. Never.
He talks about his work as governor of Minnesota. And I'll just go ahead and play the part that he tells you to clip, because why not?
This is the part, clip and save it and send it to your undecided relatives so they know. If you're a middle-class family or a family trying to get into the middle class, Kamala Harris is going to cut your taxes. If you're getting squeezed by prescription drug prices, Kamala Harris is going to take on Big Pharma. If you're hoping to buy a home, Kamala Harris is going to help make it more affordable. And no matter who you are, Kamala Harris is going to stand up and fight for your freedom to live the life that you want to lead. Because that's what we want for ourselves, and it's what we want for our neighbors.
And then he finishes with a football metaphor. Again, very all-American. Before Kamala Harris accepts her nomination, Pink sings us a song we hear from colleagues from her legal career. Her sister speaks, her nieces come on stage. It's adorable. Kamala Harris wishes Doug a happy anniversary, thanks Joe Biden, thanks Tim Walz, and then gets into her life story. She talks about her childhood, making sure to identify herself as a member of the middle class. Actually, prominent in this whole convention is a discussion of the time that she spent working at McDonald's. She talks about growing up around the civil rights movement. She talks about her history as a prosecutor. She even uses the phrase Kamala Harris for the people and uses it to segue into her acceptance of the party's nomination.
No one should be made to fight alone. We are all in this together. And every day in the courtroom, I stood proudly before a judge and I said 5 words: Kamala Harris for the people.
Then she really gets into her political career.
As a young courtroom prosecutor in Oakland, California, I stood up for women and children against predators who abuse them. As Attorney General of California, I took on the big banks, delivered $20 billion from middle-class families who faced foreclosure, and helped pass a homeowner Bill of Rights, one of the first of its kind in the nation. I stood up for veterans and students being scammed by big for-profit colleges, for workers who are being cheated out of their wages, the wages they were due, for seniors facing elder abuse. I fought against the cartels who traffic in guns and drugs and human beings, who threaten the security of our border and the safety of our communities. And I will tell you, these fights were not easy. And neither were the elections that put me in those offices.
She calls Donald Trump an unserious man, but says the consequences of putting him back in the White House would be very serious. You know, because he attempted a coup and he's a felon and a sexual abuser who plans to pardon his insurrectionist friends. Plus, the Supreme Court just gave him the right to do whatever he wants, ostensibly. Anyway, Kamala Harris says, as one does, that growing and protecting the middle class will be a prominent pillar of her presidency. She talks about the dystopia that is post-jobs America and lays out some of the plans in Project 2025. Then she gets into foreign policy, saying that she will ensure that America has the strongest military in the world and that NATO is secure and veterans are protected and all the classics. She hits on all the classics there. She does touch on the situation in Palestine, which was notably talked around for most of the convention. There were pro-Palestine protesters outside the convention, and the movement did have uncommitted delegates at the convention, but they were not given a speaking slot on stage. So here's what Kamala Harris had to say.
With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. Clear. I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7. At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
Do I think it's been time for a ceasefire? Yes, I do. But do I think that we have a better chance of getting there with Kamala than we do with death and destruction Donald? Yeah, I do. And am I willing to vote in protest of a party that does not meet all of my qualifications when the alternative is less rights for pregnant people, less taxes for billionaires, the elimination of things like the Department of Education, and a commander-in-chief who seeks the approval of dictators and autocrats? No, I am not. Somewhere around the 35-minute mark, Harris closes her speech with a call for unity and a lesson from her mother.
You know, our opponents in this race are out there every day denigrating America, talking about how terrible everything is. Well, my mother had another lesson she used to teach. Never let anyone tell you who you are. You show them who you are.
And that was the DNC, as viewed by me over the course of several days while lying in my bed.